You mentioned a couple of cases, Davis versus Vandermeer, which dealt with partisan gerrymandering, and in the case of Shaw versus Reno, which really dealt with racial gerrymandering. How do those two fit together? I'm not quite sure. Could you explain that? What ties them together?
Gerrymandering is redistricting in order to favor one sort of group, and so because in Shaw v. Reno, the districts were formed to, as you said, favor a certain race, and in Davis v. Vandermeer, they were formed to favor the Democratic Party. And in Davis v. Vandermeer, the Supreme Court said that although the Democrats were somewhat favored in the districts, the mere lack of proportional representation did not diminish the Democrats' electoral power enough to violate the Equal Protection Clause.
You said something interesting in your opening statement, that the Democrats who were voting on health care were reluctant to do so because of their re-elections. Do you think self-interest in being re-elected is a problem in our system? And if so, what would you do to solve it?
I do not believe it's a problem. The job of the representatives is to represent their constituents, and in order to be re-elected, they need to do a good job of representing their constituents, obviously. So no, I don't think it's a problem. I think it's good that they must vote along with the wishes of their constituents in order to be re-elected.
However, it's important to note that our Missouri Senator Claire McCaskill decided to vote for health care even though the majority of her constituents were not in favor of this, because she felt that it was for the common good of the people, and she took the more trustee form of representation, where she decided that even though her constituents may be against this, she felt it was best for them, and so she went for it.
Also, a representative from Michigan, Bart Stupak, said, quote, "We do not want to see health care reform be passed efficiently if it does not go with the will of the people." You see there that Bart Stupak is not trying to go and get a re-election. He's trying to get the will of his people and try to represent his constituents wisely.
Most of the democracies in the world are parliamentary systems. But in recent years, Israeli voters now vote for the prime minister separately than their own member of parliament. And with every passing election, the British system becomes more like ours. Why do you think some of the parliamentary systems are moving in our direction?
I think it's important because, that they move in our direction, because this creates a separation of powers, and that's important so that one group cannot get too much power. With the prime minister being elected or appointed from the members of parliament, they're both obviously from the same party, so there's not much resistance to what they want to be passed. However, in our system, there's many checks and balances, for example, the veto power and the veto override, that can check legislation.
In 1982, Congress amended the Civil Rights Act, so that beginning with the 1990 census, there would be the creation of majority-minority districts. There are approximately 45 today. What do you think about these districts? Are they good for democracy or bad for democracy?
I think it's important for those who are in a minority to have representation in Congress. As we've seen throughout our history, there's been a lot of oppression, and I think it is very important that the people who have been oppressed are able to have their voices heard and their selves represented by someone.
However, I believe that you don't have to be of the same race to be able to represent someone well. I think that a black man could represent a white woman and know her needs and know the needs of all the constituents, no matter what race or gender or ethnicity.
Okay. Do you think the bitter partisanship in Congress today is partly a result of the way congressional districts are drawn?
Yes, I think so. Because many districts are drawn to favor a certain party, it's more extremist views, more, I'm trying to explain, instead of having more, I think if we had districts where parties are more evenly represented, there would be more moderate politicians would be elected, and so the less extremist views would be in Congress. However, since we have such a bipartisan system that and polarized views, I think that the drawing districts. I would draw districts, if I could draw districts, I would draw them so that there would be a more 50-50 sort of representation, so that there would be more moderate views in government.
Well, I'd love to have you draw them, but if you can't, who would you have do it?
I would actually have an independent committee of people draw them that are separate from the state legislatures. This way they would be away from the politics. And there's actually been an idea proposed to this called the New Independence Act, the Free Independence Act, the Redistricting Act. It has been proposed by John Tanner in the Congress.
Actually, I think it would be helpful to get rid of district lines and have a more proportional representation based on state. That way, as we have it now with the winner takes all mentality, even if someone wins 49-51, they still, the person with 51 gets the representative. So I think a proportional representation would more fairly represent the needs of all the people.
How? By party?
Excuse me?
By party registration? How would you decide other than majority vote?
Well, simply by proportional representation in a state, people would run, and then the constituents would vote for who they wanted, and then the number of representatives would be proportional to the percentage of votes they got.
And you're talking about an at-large system.
Yes, for each state.
Does the Constitution permit that?
No, it does not, but an amendment would have to be passed.
Are you aware that it's been done before in our history?
Yes, a couple states actually do that for the Electoral College for voting for the president.
What do you think would be the effect if you went to that system on the representation of minorities?
This would allow, a proportional system would allow for the emergence of third parties, more parties, and we'd probably have to form a coalition government, and we would definitely go away from our two-party system, which in many ways would be a very good thing, except I don't believe that many people in politics now would really go for that.